Thank you to the choir. That was beautiful. A long time ago, when I lived in Southern California, I had a favorite drive down to the beach. It was a curvy road with low, rolling hills on either side. At one point, as you round the hills, the ocean suddenly appears and is spread out in front of you. It just opens up. It's beautiful. One morning, I was taking this drive down to the beach, and when I rounded that last bend, I noticed that the top of the hillside to my right had been completely removed, just chopped off. The whole rounded, but just chopped off. It was now a flattened plateau covered with large yellow construction vehicles. And I had this visceral reaction in my whole body in response to that desecration. I can't describe it. It's like my whole body felt the pain of the earth in that moment. Another one of these experiences happened more recently. There was a stand of trees along this road as I drove to the church in Sterling, Virginia, where I worked. It was a small stand, maybe 2 to 5 acres, and it was surrounded by strip malls, but it was this little oasis of trees in the midst of it all. One morning I drove by, I saw construction vehicles. And within a couple of weeks, the area was just a wasteland of downed trees lying in piles, side by side, waiting to be hauled away. And again, I felt that visceral feeling of pain of the earth in my own body. An enormous data center now sits on that little tract of land. We forget sometimes in our human hubris that the earth is not something to control and to destroy, that the earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth because the earth will be here far beyond our lifetimes. We have all heard of the term survival of the fittest. This idea is so widespread that we believe it is the whole truth of evolutionary theory. But it's not. Herbert Spencer, the sociologist that coined the term, not Darwin, by the way, was the architect and advocate of what is known as social Darwinism, the idea that societies evolve in much the same way as biological systems, that only the strong survive, that there are cultures and people who are simply socially and economically prone to survive, and we should not put any barriers in their way. He believed social welfare systems merely prevented the least successful from perishing as they should. His ideas led to the eugenics movement in the US of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. He convinced Darwin that this model of survival of the fittest was the best way to describe evolutionary natural selection when Darwin was looking for a catchy way of describing it. Darwin himself was not convinced at the time that it was the best description, but the term was incorporated into later editions of Origins of the Species. Spencer wanted a biological theory that would both legitimate and rationalize unjust social systems. Has anyone ever heard of Peter Kropotkin? He was one of the most famous public intellectuals of the late 19th and early 20th century. He was a household name in Britain, Europe, and the United States. He was a younger contemporary of Spencer and Darwin and was an avowed evolutionary biologist who studied biological systems primarily in Russia and Siberia. He was a devoted follower of Darwin, so with Origin of the Species in hand, he determined that he would find, as they say, natural systems red in tooth and claw. But that's not what he found. He developed a theory of what he called mutual aid. In his book of the same title, he wrote in 1902, "I failed to find, although I was eagerly looking for it, that bitter struggle for the means of existence among animals belonging to the same species, which was considered by Darwinists as the dominant characteristic of the struggle for life and the main factor in evolution. Instead, what Kropotkin observed was, in all these scenes of animal life which passed before my eyes, I saw mutual aid and mutual support carried on to an extent which made me suspect in it a feature of the greatest importance for the maintenance of life, the preservation of each species, and its further evolution." He wrote, "As far as sociology and biology were concerned, consequently, when my attention was drawn later on to the relations between Darwinism and sociology, I could agree with none of the works of the pamphlets that had been written upon this subject. They all endeavored to prove that man, owing to his higher intelligence and knowledge, may mitigate the harshness of the struggle for life between people, but they all recognized at the same time that the struggle for the means of existence of every animal against all its congeners and of every man against all other men was the law of nature. This view, however," he said, "I could not accept, because I was persuaded from his own observations that to admit a pitiless inner war for life within each species and to see that in a war a condition of progress was to admit something which not only had not been proved, but also lacked confirmation from direct observation." Kropotkin was an anarchist and believed socially in the value of unions and mutual aid society for the betterment of humanity. I bring up these two men because their ideas of evolution are inextricably linked to the social and economic systems they wanted to perpetuate. And their understandings of evolution mirrored those systems. So who was correct, competition or cooperation? The answer is, not always obviously, both. And what does that have to do with belonging to nature? The idea of competition has so dominated Western thought, and it so skews our understanding of what it means to survive, that we have distanced ourselves from the natural world and its systems, so that we see them only as resources to exploit, conquer, and control. And we have also come to see ourselves as separate from them, not in relationship to them. In her book, Hospicing Modernity, Vanessa Machado de Oliveira writes, "This imposed sense of separation or separability is based on the idea of human exceptionalism, the idea that humans are superior species that deserve to conquer, dominate, and control their natural systems. Human exceptionalism is also the basis for anthropocentrism, which places humans at the center of and as the most important entities in the world. In addition to naturalizing separations and hierarchies between humans and nature, modernity and coloniality also produces separations and hierarchies within humanity. For instance, the capacity to reason in a legitimate way, or at all, is attributed to only particular human bodies and particular cultures. Cultural supremacy secures a position where certain bodies are perceived to naturally embody authority and to be the legitimate arbiters of justice, who are best fit to impose on other bodies what they believe to be objective and universal parameters and protocols for morality, ethics, economy, politics, and science. That's a whole lot of words, but it comes down to this. If we believe that humans are outside of, and not rather in relationship to, the natural world, and if we believe that some people are so irrelevant as to be dispensable, we will live in the world in a particular way. I believe this kind of thinking is at the heart of the climate crisis. It is at the heart of the isolationist thinking that is so prevalent in our current political atmosphere, that we can somehow isolate and propagate a homogeneous society based on a philosophy of separation. Instead, I think we need a new narrative, a narrative of cooperation and collaboration. We are not meant to be always fighting, always in competition. If we are, we will surely destroy ourselves and the world around us. It is already happening. Robin Wall Kimmerer, plant biologist and member of the Potawatomi Indigenous Nation, in her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, writes, "The story of our relationship with the earth is written more truthfully on the land than on the page. It lasts there. The land remembers what we said and what we did. Stories are among our most potent tools for restoring the land as well as our relationship to the land. All stories are connected, new ones woven from the threads of the old. And new stories are being told. Susan Simard, who studies forests in her book Finding the Mother Tree, tells us the story of cooperation found in the ecosystems of old-growth forests. How trees cooperate within and between species. She discovered the system of forest communication in mycorrhizal fungal networks that connect plant life, that convey messages among and between species in an exchange of nutrients. Her early research was thought of skeptically by her male colleagues. Why, they asked, would different species cooperate with each other? Didn't that go against survival of the fittest? So ingrained was that paradigm in their minds. And they didn't believe her. But she persevered and proved that there is indeed a complex web of communication and collaboration among and between species in forest ecosystems, what she calls the wood wide web. What we need to remember is that we are part of these larger systems also. We are of the earth in the same way that all other species are of the earth. If we pollute all the water, we lose, because everybody lives downstream. If we cut down all the trees, we die. If we destroy fragile ecosystems, we destroy ourselves. It is the lesson of the climate crisis. What we do has consequences. Evolution is a story. When different people read the story, they interpret it in different ways, depending on their experience, from a triumphalist view of empire or from a place of mutuality among people. The idea of human separation for other humans and the natural world is a story. The idea of interdependence and our connection to each other and to the natural world is a story. It is up to us to pick the story that speaks to this time. Maybe it is time to let go of survival of the fittest as our dominant paradigm of survival. Unless we recontextualize it within the larger ecosystem, which demonstrates that the fittest are those who learn to collaborate and cooperate in order that not only they, but the systems and species they rely on for sustenance survive and thrive also. Amen, and blessed be.